Republicans are laying the groundwork for candidates to follow former President Donald Trump's election-denying playbook, creating the potential for vote audits up and down the ballot for years to come. Of most concern to election experts and voting rights advocates is Texas's SB 47, a bill Republicans are currently fast-tracking through the state legislature. It would allow any candidate or party chair to force multiple inquiries into anything they view as an election irregularity. These inquiries would not require any burden of proof and could be pursued for potentially years after an election is over, all at the expense of taxpayers. Roughly one-third of Americans believe Trump's continued lies about widespread voter fraud in the 2020 election. Now add in the potential for similar claims from dozens of losing candidates in every single primary and general election race, not to mention county and state party chairs and committees supporting ballot measures, all of whom can also force a look into a past election, and you have the nightmare outcome of a bill like Texas's SB 47.
It was the single most concerning bill I have seen all legislative session, Sarah Walker, Executive Director for the national, nonpartisan election integrity group Secure Democracy, said this week. The bill, which passed the state Senate Tuesday, still needs a vote in the House, but it is getting an aggressive PR campaign from Trump, in part because it also includes an audit of the 2020 election. Trump has spent weeks putting intense pressure on Governor Greg Abbott, who is up for re-election next year, to do a strong and real audit despite winning the state by 6 points. Abbott's office did not immediately respond to a request for comment. Even if SB 47 does not become law this year, the damage of Trump's voter fraud crusade has largely been done. Former Kentucky Secretary of State Trey Grayson, a Republican who has become an outspoken voice in his party against these partisan audits, argued that Trump has already set an example for candidates at all levels to reject election results. When you see him not accepting the outcome, despite evidence, and making wild allegations, I am confident that we're gonna see it happen this year, he said. You know, this is kind of an off year, we don't have a lot of elections, but if there's close races, people are just gonna approach it differently because what's going to happen is your supporters are going to expect it. As Walker put it, if we can see the sort of wildfire, sham audit spread in an election in which it was a decisive victory, you can only imagine what happens when it is a close election. Grayson, who ran elections in Kentucky for 7 years, and every other expert interviewed for this story emphasized that real audits, conducted by experienced professionals and in the immediate aftermath of an election, are healthy and important aspects of democracy. We want to make sure that we actually elect the right person, as Grayson put it. But election challenges used to end when the results were certified. Not anymore. Republicans in Arizona, Pennsylvania, and Washington state have also introduced legislation this year to expand post-election audits in the future, according to Secure Democracy. None of the bills go as far as Texas's, but that could change. Texas has one of the few legislatures in session right now, most have already adjourned for the year. One thing about Texas is that we are often on the cutting edge, unfortunately, of these things. And this could be, if it passes, a model for other states, said James Slater, senior staff attorney with the Texas Civil Rights Project. In addition to revisiting the 2020 election, SB 47 would allow any candidate, county or state party chair, presiding judge, or the head of a specific purpose political committee that supports or opposes a ballot measure to force an audit at any time after a primary or general election going forward. First, they can write to a county clerk or other election authority asking them to respond to an irregularity or alleged unlawful behavior by an election officer. The county then has to respond to every one of those requests it receives with an explanation and documentation within 20 days, and they have to pay for the investigation. If the candidate or other requester isn't satisfied with that explanation, the county has to do another investigation, this time in 10 days, also out of their own pocket. If they're still unsatisfied with that answer, it then goes to the Secretary of State, who either rules outright or starts an audit. What an audit would entail, The bill does not say, but it, too, has to be paid for by the county. If a violation is found, the county would have 30 days to fix it before incurring $500 daily fines until it is resolved. The bill's author, State Senator Paul Bettencourt, said in an interview Friday that the Secretary of State would determine the scope of an audit and that it would be conducted by the county elections authority at issue, though that's not currently laid out in the legislation, meaning the Secretary of State could define an audit however they'd like. For Bettencourt, this is all about transparency. He says he first thought about writing the bill back in October because he had heard of some irregularities in early voting and tried to look into them, but says he still hasn't gotten a response to his questions. Look, it's the job of all public officials to respond to inquiries by the public. That's really what this is. You have to have that communication because fundamentally people have to have belief in the integrity of the voter roll or they don't believe the election results, he said. Slater, who testified against SB 47 earlier this week, said that one of his biggest concerns is the lack of any penalty for candidates or other parties who try to force an audit over false information or in bad faith. The incentive here is for people to just request this process to start, without any fear that someone is going to hold them to account. And it may just mean that this is done frequently, and for really bad reasons, he said. Grayson said that's one of the benefits of handling allegations of voter fraud the way we do now, through the courts. That's what we saw in 2020. There's a whole lot of things that get alleged but that people are not willing to put their signatures. A lawyer is not willing to present that to a court because there's not evidence for it, he said. And now, if you set up this process where we don't put any kind of standard, you allow anybody to allege anything and that causes you to immediately have to drop what you're doing and do an audit.
Thank you for watching. Please subscribe